Hello there, and welcome to Alternating Creative Intellectuality. I'm doing this video, and it's quite a tough one for me to do, especially since there's been a lot of uh, anti-Semitic pogroms. Well, pogroms, that is to say, because of the way the Jews have been frightened into going into hiding or made to flee because of rising anti-Semitism in the UK, all of which stems from that horrible and horrific attack by the Hamas terrorists invading southern Israel on the 7th of October. There's an article that I was going to have written in the Havering Daily, which would have gone online by some time, but due to the atmosphere surrounding events that are going around in Britain, and because my editors decided it would be better to not publish this piece or anything related to the war between Gaza and Israel, because it was deemed to be, well, creating more anger and fear and tension, so it was decided to keep it out of the Havering Daily. I don't usually have my things censored in this way. Well, it's not censored, it's just that they wanted to promote, keep the peace and quell the violent rhetoric that we've seen in the media from the pro-Palestinian organisations whose allies are in the left-wing mainstream media are pushing old-fashioned blood libels against Jews. This is absolutely atrocious. I cannot for the like of me believe that here in Britain in the 2020s I'm witnessing anti-Semitism similar to Germany in the 1920s and 30s. So barbaric. I really do feel and support my Jewish friends and followers. I love Jews. They have done a lot for me and my fellow autistics and disabled people. I attach my my autism advocacy to Zionism because of the way that Jews have done so much in promoting autism, and in fact there's a lot of connections between autism psychology and advocacy and the Jews and their Zionist movement. Both of them believe in self-determination for autistic people. That is to say, also, just as Zionism was about promoting the self-determination of Jewish people, autistic people, I believe my autistic conservative objectives are about the self-determination of autistic people to achieve what they can with their gifts and not become, suffer from persecution, elimination, or assimilation anymore. Yes, that's right. All activists for civic justice must resist social eugenics. If we are to fight for self-determination and to promote peace and harmony between all the different tribes and nations of this world, we need to stop presenting our struggles as a fight for human rights, which is a masked trait that is used to, well, justify the brutal murder and killing of innocent women, children and babies, and raping them and torturing them, just as what has been seen in Israel 2 weeks ago. Now I'll start by reading my article here. I'm going to read it to you so as if the Havering Days decide not to publish it. 50 years ago, Israel was attacked by a coalition of Arab armies led by Egypt and Syria in the Yom Kippur War. The world watched with bated breath as the Jewish state resisted and held out from being annihilated by these crushing powers far greater than their own. As the world held its nerve, Israel triumphed, and the Middle East was peaceful and stable again. Now, 50 years later, on the end of this Yom Kippur, Israel has come under attack by the terrorist organisation Hamas. They made a brutal surprise attack on the south of the country. The assault on Israel saw Hamas launch gunmen on paragliders over a music festival in the Negev desert, and they fired 5,000 rockets into Israel, hurting civilians as far as Tel Aviv. Most shockingly of all, the Hamas terrorists stormed into people's homes and took them hostage, one of which included a young 16-year-old autistic girl who only yesterday it was revealed had been murdered, had not actually been taken hostage, but had been murdered along with her grandmother. And that in itself is also horrible. I've even kept the name of this girl in the. I will keep the name of this girl alive from this newspaper article. Yes, her name was Noya Dan, a 12-year-old Harry Potter fan, and J.K. Rowling even took the time to post on Twitter X about her kidnapping when it was first believed she was kidnapped. Here's what she wrote. Kidnapping children is despicable and wholly unjustifiable. For obvious reasons, this picture has hit home with me. May Noya and all hostages taken by Hamas be returned soon, safely to their families. Well, thank you very much, J.K. Rowling. This autistic warrior of self-determination applauds you for standing up for one of your fans, especially an autistic girl who has got who I believe had a lot going for her, and I very much hope that she's sending down all her bright ideas of storytelling creativity from heaven and passing them on to other children. God bless her soul. Now, let's get back to the gory details. Some of these people, and there are some of the people who were attacked in Gaza, some of the people at that festival and around the Negev desert, where there was a kibbutz of a community of people who were taken hostage. In fact, Hamas took 200 people hostage, and some of them were stripped naked and their bodies taken as trophies, and some made to pose for photos on social media being tortured. At the time I've written this, 700 Israelis have been killed, and the Israeli Defense Force are engaging Hamas in a counterattack on Gaza, although now around 1,300 people have been killed in that assault in southern Israel. And now, as soon as the news reached a stunned world, I was shocked and horrified by the invading and bloodthirsty terrorists making advances on the ground. I expressed my solidarity with the people of Israel and started making it be known that I would be extending my autistic conservative mission to defending Israel. I have strong feelings towards Israel and to the Jewish people for what they have done to make advances for autism in this world. I made this graphic a while ago and presented it to some Jewish bloggers and journalists, and they were very honoured by my support to them. I've made that graphic as a A3 poster that you can now buy on Etsy. You can find the link on this YouTube channel to find it. Meanwhile, in London, videos on social media showed Islamist anti-Israel activists waving the flags and praising Hamas for the attack on the Jewish state. Now, at the time I'm making this video, there is currently another protest about to take place in London, and there was one last week where several hundred protesters were outside the BBC and around Downing Street, shouting "Free Palestine" and free Gaza, although I would probably add to that, free Gaza from Hamas, and stop defending a fictitious state which hasn't even been taken over or colonised by Jewish people. Well, the classic argument behind Free Palestine is that the anti-Israel activists are claiming that all the Jews who made the modern state of Israel their home are descendants of Holocaust survivors who come from Eastern Europe, and that to them, all the modern Israelis of today are descendants of Eastern European Jews who built this, and they falsely claim that Israel was this colonial entity built in the Middle East, which of course is all a lie. I've spent years reading about the stories behind this lie, and it's permeated so steeply into the social justice narrative that they have become that just about every social justice war in Britain has been made into a useful idiot. So much so that it's now considered to be okay to be racist to Jews. During the protests, there was this man whose wife I'm friends with on Facebook, who I met at the Conservative Party conference. His name is Vahid Beshti. He fled Iran 25 years ago and has become a pro-democracy protester here in Britain. He's already spent several months camping outside the Foreign and Development Office in London, calling for the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps to be made designated as a terrorist organisation. And during the protest last Saturday, he was attacked by a pocket of anti-Israel protesters, and the police had to encircle him to corner and protect him. And when this happened, he got, well, one of the protesters who cornered him threatened to behead him. The police arrested this protester, and they had discovered that he had a knife in his bag. God, absolutely abhorrent. God. As if the killing of teenagers wasn't bad enough in London, we have got people who use their religion and their cause for justice as excuse to be violent, blood-curdling, bloodthirsty savages who will act like they own the streets and they can kill whoever they want and use their human rights campaign as an excuse. That's not social justice. That is just bloody-minded social eugenics. Now, the police are on high alert to prevent attacks on Jews and Jewish buildings. Hopefully, they can quash a repeat of the wave of the anti-Semitic violence that erupted across Britain in May 2021. I take that back in my article. They have not been able to protect Jews in the same way as they did, because the do-gooders who are defending Jewish bigotry have now gotten so strong that it would be better to put the Jews into hiding rather than challenge and tackle the radical Islamist fascist supporters. Now, on that topic of presenting supporters of the pogroms and the anti-Jewish blood libels that we're seeing perpetrated in the media. The way the terrorist attack has been presented in left-wing media outlets is outrageous. Some of them call it freedom of the fictitious Palestinian nation, which is the mask that the Arab world uses to call for destruction of Israel and the massacre of the Jews of the world. The BBC, in all their virtuous condescension, refused to call the Hamas fighters terrorists and instead called them militants instead. Now, on the subject of masking, I can tell you something that we have in autism, which they are using here. The pro-Palestinian activists are using that is also seen in autism. In the autism community, we have this thing called masking your traits, whereby I, as an autistic person, put on this mask, pretending to act normal in public and when talking to people, so that I appear normal, so I don't feel weird and strange when conversing with other people. This includes suppressing stimming, forcibly making eye contact, and pretending to take an interest in another person's feelings in situations where I've struggled to feel empathetic to a person. That in itself is rather tricky for me to do, and I even struggle to master that sometimes. And in the same way, these pro-Palestine supporters are also masking their prejudices. In fact, they mask it so well that they present Israel as the oppressor state and the Palestinians victims. This dates back to a trick that Yasser Arafat learned from the Viet Cong leader Ho Chi Minh in the 1960s. Yes, from the article. The hateful ideology has influenced Western left-wing justice campaigners who have been made to think that it makes them better anti-racists to hate Israel. There are quite a lot of useful idiots amongst these noble do-gooders who make the kidnapping of women and children by Islamist Nazis appear respectable. Publicly, they say that these Gaza-based Arab Muslims are being oppressed by the Jewish state, like being in an open-air prison. But privately, they are declared as useful idiots to their cause by the Palestinian terrorists. It's a trick, and this trick goes like this. General Giap, who was Ho Chi Minh's one of Ho Chi Minh's generals during the Vietnam War, told Arafat, you've got to stop presenting yourselves as a military force wanting to destroy Israel. You won't get the support of the West or anyone else in the world if you say that, because you're just perpetrating war. So here's what you do. Present yourselves as victims and create this fictional backstory about Palestine, about your land being stolen by the Jews to build the modern state of Israel as it is today, even though historically the Jews are the ancestral owners of Israel. So what you do is you go out presenting yourselves as victims of Israeli oppression, and create fake stories of genocide and death and destruction towards Palestinian culture. If you do that, you'll have all these do-gooders in the West eating out of your hands. And, well, since it's been done over the last 50 years, well, it really has taken effect. You know, a friend of mine who was at Essex University attended an event where former British Army General Richard Kemp had been speaking to a conservative Conservative Party student group at the University of Essex to talk about the failed withdrawal from Afghanistan in 2021, and some of the there was protests outside the venue where they knew that Rich Kemp had previously done work alongside the Israeli army in the past, and he had told And well, they shouted a stream of anti-Israeli slogans. In one video that I saw, I heard them shout, "There ain't no more Jews to see here. That's right, Juden free." God, idiots. Absolute idiots everywhere. Man, social justice warriors are absolute suckers for grievance stories. Now, I was at the Conservative Party conference in Manchester, where I took it upon myself to network on behalf of Israeli actress and anti-Semitism campaign envoy Noah Tishby. It was for a project she was going to start to promote peace and harmony between Israeli and Palestinian youth. It's called the Peace Education Dialogue Initiative, and I believe it can foster peace, reconciliation, mutual respect between Palestinian and Israeli communities. This is just what we need more of to undertake the challenges the Jewish community face in order to prevent more blood being spilt, both both from Arabs and Jews. Whilst I was there, I attended the Conservative Friends of Israel's fringe event celebrating the 75 years of Israel as a sovereign nation. London mayoral candidates, the Conservative London mayoral candidate, Susan Hall, gave a speech criticising Sadiq Khan for his failures to defend the Jewish community in London. As a follower of Jewish bloggers, I can tell you Jews don't feel safe in London at all. And as Susan Hall says, "I know how frightened some of the Jewish community is because of the divisive attitude of Sadiq Khan. I totally agree with her, and I know the Conservative Party in London will have diversity policies that are not directed by people who abuse them to dominate other groups and encourage segregation." Considering how much a lot of Labour members believe in a hierarchy of racism, as shown by Diane Abbott's public letter in The Guardian earlier this year, yes, that's right, in April this year, 2023, Diane Abbott wrote this letter, a public letter that got published, declaring that Jews do not suffer racism all their lives, and she had completely dismissed the enslavement of the Jews in biblical times, the pogroms against them during the medieval ages, and of course the Holocaust. Yes, well, clearly she's such an idiotic woman, an idiotic MP, that she can't even bother that she only seems to defend ethnic minorities she prefers. Now, according to people like Diane Abbott, Jeremy Corbyn, and of course a lot of other left-wing political advocates, they believe that Jews should be the lowest on the order of equality and protection because they are wealthy and powerful. Well, that is utterly repulsive, and I'm glad to say that I've got better taste in diversity. And I don't care if my words sound like dog whistle politics to woke activists. Yesterday, I shared a post I wrote supporting Judaism and autism. The Autism and Judaism connection on Instagram got some responses from some pro-Hamas anti-Semites who were absolutely absolutely trying to gaslight me about the about the way that the Israelis were being awful towards awful towards the Gazans, and that they were initiating genocide against them. And in fact, one of them even wrote in their post that I wrote in response to me, calling me a retard. Yes, that's right. Here we are, social justice activists who also believe, and this proves my point, that these people believe in a hierarchy of racism. In fact, as an autistic man, I'm considered even lower than Jews because, being that I have a disability, I'm not really worth defending in an argument against prejudice. Oh, and yes, that's right. It really does sicken me sometimes to think that anti-racism activists think like this. And I think there's this deep-rooted problem with anti-racism and anti-discrimination advocacy movements the world over. In the time of Martin Luther King, fighting racial prejudice and injustice was about promoting love, peace, harmony, and justice between fellow human beings. And nowadays, it just seems to be about feasting on other people's grievances and using that to pit against other ethnic groups and minorities to see which of them can be the most aggressive towards each other in order to survive. That is classic social eugenics. The the activists of the activists of today who claim to be compassionate and defending freedom are using eugenics inspired ideas to make the world even more full of discontent and hatred and bitterness towards each other. Only when people learn to love and be friends with each other, then we will have peace. Now, carrying on from the article, at least my taste in diversity is not made up of at least my taste in diversity is made up of decent, law-abiding, right-minded, good characters, and not made up of social eugenicists and human monsters like these Jew-hating savages. They think they are above the law and can beat people up while claiming to be part of a super race of compassion and justice. My autistic conservative mission is to resist these social eugenics ideas and promote harmony, joy, and respect between fellow human beings. The characters and minorities I choose to associate myself with don't expect me to stay silent when they bully me to prove that I'm not racist. And I'm really vexed with this civil rights crisis in which some groups of people and cultures think they deserve more protection and defence than others because they have the biggest grievances to declare. By this logic, as an autistic man who is declared to have a disability, I'm broken, defective and weak, and I should have a ghetto all to myself. That is not my style of autism advocacy. It borders on hatred and resentment and does no progress to making happiness and peace for Londoners. In Havering, we get good people supporting each other by promoting joy and harmony, and I have stood up for Jewish, Muslim and Christian beliefs in this borough through their public events. I'm a standard bearer for Holocaust Memorial Days to represent the disabled who were massacred in the Holocaust. And I've even got Muslim friends who are much better than the Muslim Bengalis who I was at school with because they don't expect me to shut up and behave like a good little slave to declare that I'm not racist. And I've even reconnected with my Christian connections to promote love and joy between all these different groups and to show for the glory of God that we can all be that as civilization was blessed with diversity and all different forms of thought and intellectuality, we are one glorious civilization of people. In my response to Sadiq Khan at his failure to defend London's Jewish community, I can tell him that I can tell him I can tell him my story with a gentleman's agreement type communique. Yes, that's right, a gentleman's agreement. By that, I'm referring to a 1947 film about an American journalist called Philip Green, played by Gregory Peck. I watched this film myself, and in it, the character who he plays, Philip Green, assumes a Jewish identity to live and learn about antisemitism. Now, like Philip Green, who adopted a name calling himself Philip Schuyler Green, I too experienced anti-Semitism, and it happened to me in school. Even though I'm not Jewish, but even though I'm not Jewish, I was made a target for bullies who appropriated Jewish bigotry and projected it onto me because of my Polish middle name. That made me feel very on edge and unnerved, and I could feel what it's like to get targeted for intimidation by anti-Semites. Yes, that's right. On this channel previously, I may have mentioned about my Polish ancestry. My full name is Charlie Zenon Keeble. Zenon, my middle name, comes from my Polish grandfather, Zenon Gajwatowicz. I have got Polish blood in me from my mum's dad, and I'm absolutely proud to declare myself a descendant of a nation that also resists persecution and tyranny, and fought hard to reclaim its borders. The Poles are a nation of highly spirited, defensible freedom fighters who are gentiles in making sure that they are, well, purely great and glorious, for which there is everlasting peace and freedom in Europe. Now, back to the article. I love the Jewish people, and I will defend them with all my might to be that righteous gentile. I've lived in the shoes of a bullied Jew without knowing it, and I can relate to what they're experiencing now. My school was Oakland Secondary School in Old Bethnal Green Road. I went there from 1996 to 2001, and I was forced to face multiculturalism at the same time as being in a social minefield that was not good for my autism. At Oakland, I got picked on for two characteristics about me. One was my autism, where I got taunted for being weird, and the other was because of my Polish ancestry. The anti-Polish racism that was directed towards me was started by the Muslim Bengali pupils, whose demographic made up 40% of the school. Now, being that I was an autistic pupil, I was expected to be given basic life skills and taught special needs provisions, a special needs program that is, to teach me how to interact with people, learn how to manage my autistic traits, and how to think and uh, think about how to communicate with people and interact with them, so that I could hold down a job as well as do my academic work properly. However, I never got such provisions like that, because because they had although they had a good autism support network here, or so they claimed, I did not get a proper life skills tutor in there. And I was even kept in the dark about the mystery behind why I got intimidated by the Muslim Bengali pupils. When I asked my tutors about why the Bengali kids were making such a big deal about me being called Zenon, they told me to keep quiet about it. They gaslit me into thinking that it was my fault that I mentioned that my middle name is Zenon. And the kid, yes, that's right, you heard me, gaslit me. The kids would shout at me things like, "You're rich, why are you called Zenon?" And I even, on one occasion, got shouted in my face, "You dirty Pole." I even once got punched on the side of my head by a Bengali Muslim, and I didn't even get any sympathy from the teacher. He just got angry with me, saying, "Charlie, why did you tell everyone here that you're called Zenon?" This just confused me even more, and to make matters worse, they didn't even move me from that school to a different place. And I never learned why, but I think they did it to me. I think they didn't tell me two good reasons. One, because they didn't want to lose vital support funding from the council, who paid up to over £37,000 just to provide a financial support to the school for my disability needs, and the other being that they didn't want to embarrass themselves in front of their critics, saying, "Oh, ha 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 ha! Look at you! Your diversity policy has failed. Multiculturalism's not working. These Bengali Muslims are beating him up because he's got Polish blood in him. You can't even admit your own racism." Yes, that's right. Well, you should try admitting your own racism, Matt. Anyone who believes that, well, you have to be, that you own the diversity narrative, well, you should try admitting your own racism, because anti-discrimination policies can be weaponised against people when they're made to serve and protect one race above another. I remember one of the Bengali kids in my class asking my form tutor something like, "What is Charlie doing here? I don't want Polish people like him in my school. Is he a Jew?" And he said this to me in front. He said this in front of me, just us and the teacher, and he allowed him to make such a racist remark in front of me, thinking that I was and I didn't know how to respond at the time, but I think I probably, if I had known better, I would have said, "How the hell can you let him make a racist remark like that? If you've got a multicultural program here, you should try and get him to get along with other people." At least, God, I don't feel really, really horrible. I hated being there. The curriculum was just as crap as the school's manners were. I was still without any clue as to what this taunting was all about, but I did find out about the meaning behind their anti-Semitic rhetoric indirectly. One time, I borrowed a copy of my nan's book of Anne Frank's diary, and I took it into school to read, and I was reading it in an empty room just before register, and the teacher caught me reading it, and he angrily told me to put it away. And I was just confused. I looked at him and said, "Why are you angry with me for reading Anne Frank?" Instead of giving me an explanation, he just shouted in my face, "Put that book away now, or else I'll throw it in the bin." My teacher was so horrible and sardonic to me sometimes, he told me that I should just shut up and be grateful for this education. I went through my entire school in Oaklands confused and disadvantaged. Many years later, when I started becoming politically active, I noticed that the Labour Party was hounding out Jewish members in 2019. And I noticed from the language they used to intimidate the Jewish members, from the media and what they were saying on social media, that it was similar to the verbal bullying I got at school. And then I suddenly realised what I went through. Uh, oh my God, I experienced anti-Semitism. They were picking on me because of my Polish ancestry. Jesus Christ. Well, you know what, Labour? If you think one race matters more than another race in your diversity policy, then you need to admit your own racism before you lecture me about your own racism. Taking a lecture from you with your ideas like that is like taking a lecture from a load of lame-brained clowns and condescending cows. You're just a stupid, useless idiot to a terrorist. That's all you are. having been subjected to that anti-Semitic bullying because of my Polish ancestry, Sadiq Khan can learn from me what happens when you let your own ethnic group dominate the race agenda. Far-right activists declare that Britain is facing an invasion by Muslims and that it's losing its Christian heritage. Well, there is a logic to that when you consider how the civil rights agenda of this country is being directed by people with evil intentions who want to just make it be known that their agenda and their objectives matter more than the race next to them. In a racism argument, a Jew or a Hindu is less likely to get more defence from in a court case, or even in a meditated situation between in a court of law, or in a human resources meeting, than a Muslim who believes that his grievances are stronger than that of the Jew or the Hindu. So, like Philip Schuyler Green in Gentleman's Agreement, I've lived anti-Semitic prejudice, and I can now write about my experiences of it to raise awareness and combat this Jewish prejudice. As the film shows, you can be proud of your differences and called to celebrate diversity in many different forms by your character and intellectuality, and we have a duty to combat prejudices. We are all different in some way, just as I am autistic and I love Jews for all the good that they have done for disabled people. Sorry about the lights in here. I really need to update my blogging equipment here. So yes, we are all different in some way, just as I am autistic and I love Jews for all the good that they have done for disabled people. And that is something for me to be proud of. That is one agreement we should all have with one another, for that is why I defend Jewish pride in Britain. Now, to all the Jews of Britain, I stand by you. You have my unequivocal support, and I stand by your homeland of Israel completely, just in the same way as Rishi Sunak declared. Not just today, not just tomorrow, but always. You have my unequivocal support, and I will not take sides with any ethnic group or social justice advocate who believes that a fight for justice should be like a eugenics crusade. Try admitting your own prejudices before you start lecturing people about how to make peace and harmony between other people. Right, I'm going to go now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and subscribe to my channel for more of my monologues and thoughts on my objectives for the autism community, and for self-determination of the Jews, and of course self-determination for autism. I will carry on fighting for everything that I believe in. All my fellow autism warriors out there, be brave, be strong, and remember, we have bright ideas with infinite imagination around the world.